Today we're going to be taking a look at a strategy RPG that goes by quite a few different names. In North America, it's known as Blazing Heroes. Over in Europe, it's known as Mystaria, the Realms of Lore. And in Japan, it's known as Riglord Saga. It's one of the few games that I've seen anyway that has completely different names depending on the region. Normally you see this from, say, Japan to Europe and North America, but it's rare that you see all three regions have a completely different name. Now, since I'm reviewing the North American version, I'll be referring to the game as Blazing Heroes. The first thing I need to mention is that if you're a fan of strategy RPGs, this is certainly one to snatch up ASAP. The eBay prices on Blazing Heroes have been rising over the past few years, and I'm certain they'll continue to rise as more and more people discover this hidden gem. Seriously, don't wait on this one, as at the time of this recording, you can still buy this game for around $20 or so. So move it. Okay, with that out of the way, let's jump on into the game. Now, the story may not have won any Oscars, but it's sort of interesting nonetheless. About a decade before the game begins, we're told of a great war that broke out across the land where a power-hungry and ruthless tyrant named Bane was forced into exile by 12 legendary warriors. Now, Bane is back and has placed the Queen under a magical spell. And get this, the Queen has appointed Bane as the ruler of the kingdom. Only the Queen's only son, Aragon, has any chance of gathering the strongest troops and putting an end to Bane once and for all. Like I said, the story isn't anything overly original, but it does what it needs to in order for you to stay interested in pressing on. But I'll admit, it's super generic. Gameplay is broken up into a couple of different sections. There's the exploration hub, or overworld, sort of like what you would expect to find in any traditional RPG. Here you move from one town to the next, or one action space to the next. Towns are usually very simple in design, but allow you the chance to purchase healing items, armor, weapons, etc. From there you move on to the meat and potatoes of the game, the action stages. These play out like any other strategy RPG, where you move your troops from one end of the playfield to the other, taking out enemies or trying to complete a variety of objectives. Some of the more interesting objectives include completing a map without engaging the enemy at all, or making your way to a specific spot on the map. Once you strategically place all of your troops, the computer AI takes control of enemy troops, and you take turns from there. Once within range, you can heal friendly targets, attack enemies with weapon-based attacks, magical attacks, or defend. The system is extremely simple to use, and the best feature of all is that you can actually skip the battle animations if you so desire by just tapping on the C button. I thought that was actually a really nice touch because it speeds things along. The combat window is very simple to use and has 4 sections to it. 3 are dedicated to combat commands, 3 selections per window. You can pick and choose which technical skills you want to have on the 3 quick menus. Technical skills are pretty much any and every combat option available. For one character, the technical skills may be something like spear attack, lightning attack, defense, fire attack, etc. I really like that you can select the ones you frequently use, but at the same time have access to a massive list of technical skills should you so desire to use something a little bit different during a battle. Perhaps the most interesting element of Blazing Heroes is that you can level your characters as you see fit based on which technical skills you use. Let's say you have a character that can use a spear attack and a sword attack. If you continuously use the spear attack, this character will slowly but surely learn more and more powerful spear attacks instead of sword attacks. This allows you to customize your party's strengths or try to balance out the entire team. The choice is left completely up to you, which is really nice. Another interesting element pertains to the story. As you recruit more and more members, the story alters itself ever so slightly based on the characters you recruit. This allows even more flexibility and customization options as you progress. Individual battles last upwards of 30 to 40 minutes depending on the map, and the whole game can be completed in around 20 hours or so. I should mention that maps featured here are some of the largest I've ever seen in a strategy RPG. These far eclipse those found in the Saturn's other big strategy RPG, Shining Force 3. More advanced techniques from other strategy RPGs are present here, including troop placement on the terrain, and classes having their own strengths and weaknesses. I suppose I should also mention something rather neat with attacks. If you don't need to move a troop, they will almost always get a critical hit on the enemy. This changes the gameplay quite a bit, especially later on, as you'll want your enemies to come to you instead of walking a great distance, which weakens your attack power. It's a rather unique system that does make sense. After all, if you move your unit too far, naturally they're going to be tired for an attack. Oh, I should also mention the fact that there is no permadeath here. You can resurrect your characters. One complaint I have with Blazing Heroes is with the translation. Spell and attack names have been abbreviated to around 8 characters only, which means the names of the individual attacks can get really confusing once you have around 50 of them or so in your menus. There are even some attribute skills that were left in Japanese, which is kind of funny. You'll notice them on the bottom right-hand corner of the level up screen, and even the story's got a couple of grammatical errors here and there. Blazing Heroes is also quite challenging, forcing you to spend a lot of time in the arena and towns in order to level up your characters. Once you do, you shouldn't have too much trouble making progression. Something else that hasn't aged quite so nicely are the game's graphics. As with most 32-bit era games, you'll have to have some nostalgia-powered glasses on to really appreciate the graphics. The game combines 3D polygonal backgrounds with 2D pre-rendered sprites, akin to Shining Force 3 and Shining the Holy Ark. Everything looks quite blocky and with limited detail. There's also slowdown if there are too many troops bundled together and you try to perform a really animated magical attack. Speaking of magical attacks, they look kinda generic. Thankfully, the soundtrack is anything but generic. It's actually surprisingly engrossing. I always thought Blazing Heroes was like the pure example of a generic strategy RPG, but it's actually far deeper than most people realize, and the soundtrack emphasizes the attention to detail the developers put into this game. While it would have been nice to get some voice work, it's clear the budget just wasn't there for that. Now, believe it or not, there was actually a Riglord Saga 2 released only in Japan, which is kind of a shame, as it would have been really nice to get a sequel to this game. And it's certainly true, the storyline isn't anything to go on about, and yes, the graphics certainly haven't aged that well, but overall, this is a really solid strategy RPG that fans of the genre shouldn't miss if you happen to own a Saturn. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with this one, guys. Just be sure to grab it before too many people realize how affordable it is. I also recommend you spend at least 2 hours with the game before you really pass judgment, because at first glance it appears as though this is nothing more than a standard subpar strategy RPG, but overall it's one of those games that truly define what it means to be a hidden gem. Go pick it up.